Welcome to the world united. Welcome to the world united.
Welcome everybody. This is your host Vansi, and today we are bringing you a prelude to the World Parliament of Spirituality, the third edition. And welcome to Meet the Master series. Today we have with us the Master, Dr. Asha Kamnani. It's really an honor and privilege to welcome you here, Dr. Asha. And Dr. Asha Kamnani has been an OBGYN and has had a really interesting journey since then. She still empowers women as she did medically, but she now works with couples as well. And she works through spirituality and she empowers them. And what touched me the most is that she wants to work towards stopping all kinds of violence, especially against women and children. And her, and just from the bio, I could get a glimpse of what her journey has been. So I would now like to request Ashaji to take us through her journey so that we learn from the wisdom that she has imbibed and she exudes even right now just through her presence. Thank you so much, Ashaji, and welcome.
I'm so humble that I'm here today in front of all of you, and pranam from me. Om Shanti, Sat Sri Akal, Vaheguru. I'm so grateful to be here. So thank you to the World United, to Dr. Yugandhar, to Mr. Harrison Klein, who invited me, and also to this beautiful young lady who's going to be talking to me and asking me questions. So, and your name is Atul too, who is organizing all this, so, and helping us. Just grateful that I'm even breathing now. So yes, I'm an OBGYN, and I just share in short my journey. And when I met my guru in 1987, she taught me to speak from my heart, and I hope that all of you, whether you speak English or not, you can at least understand the language of my heart. I wanted to, I would say my father inspired me to help women since even I was 5 years of age. And so the idea of helping women actually came from my father, and he always wanted me to serve women in some form or the other. My oldest brother, 2 older brothers were studying to be doctors, and at that moment I thought that even when I was in 2nd grade, I remember I wanted to be an OBGYN. So that's where my journey started. My spiritual journey actually started with my mother. She used to go to satsang every morning, and because I was so attached to her, so that's one of the benefits of attachment. Most of the time, attachment causes pain and suffering, but this attachment turned out to be very good for me. It sowed seeds of spirituality within me. So she would go to satsang at 7 in the morning, and my school started at 8, and I would go with her for satsang for 1 hour, and then she would drop me at school. So since very young age, I was exposed to spirituality and always felt that calmness there. And of course, then I went to India. I did my medical school. And then obviously my passion was always there to fulfill my father's dream. But I got myself very interested in helping women because of my experiences and witnessing domestic violence and molestation in the government hospitals that we trained. And personally, even in our families, our extended families in India, we have joint family systems, my cousins and a big family. So obviously my passion was growing deeper and deeper. Somehow spiritual drama was such that I was always in quest of something higher than just the physical world. And I looked into ISKCON, the Hare Krishna group, and became a life member there. Then was involved with my mother's group and then Radha Swami group. And somehow drama took a turn for me, and I reached America in 1982. And again, I feel that that was also my destiny, and I accepted gracefully. My brother was feeling lonely in Chicago and asked me to join him. So I landed in America. And the turning point in my life was 86, I think. In 1986, as most Indian girls at that time, I went through an arranged marriage, and it turned out that my husband at that time, my ex-husband now, uh, was psychologically not stable, and I myself became a victim of domestic violence. And I met Dadi Janki, the head of Brahma Kumari. She just left her body on March 27th, and someone saw me crying on the doorsteps of my house a week after my marriage, and took me to the Brahma Kumaris, where I did the course, and then I met Dadi Janki in January of 1987, and I think my life turned, and it gave me courage, it gave me strength to face everything smiling. I felt that my difficulties were not difficulties, they were challenges. And this challenge was that I would first try to get my husband to get better. Instead of blaming him for being violent, it was more like, okay, let me see if I can help him medically and spiritually. And so I tried that for 10 years when all the psychiatrists gave up on me and on my husband. I decided that then I would pursue my spiritual life completely, 100%. So as most of us know that I'm being an OBGYN, I work 24/7, 365 days a year. Somehow or the other, I made time for spirituality. As you know, most spiritual people wake up early in the morning, and we have a discipline of being in remembrance of God in whatever I do. So even my surgeries that I was performing or seeing patients, always with utmost regard for humanity, giving patients time. And
Thank you. Yeah, Asha ji, I would like to really, I mean, this is an amazing journey. You know how you have come from, from always wanting to work for women and to serve them and empower them, and then you went through your own domestic violence
right.
issue. It is just so I want to. It's been such an amazing journey just from what you have told me. I just want to walk everyone who's watching us a little more slowly. You mentioned that your father was your inspiration on, joining the medical field. Your brothers did it. Um, and then you talked about your attachment with your mother. Is there any childhood memory that comes to you that really, because you said you knew that you wanted to be an OBGYN in second grade.
Yeah.
This is very, very early. This is really remarkable. Like, I think most people are just like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor maybe, but not OBGYN. Most people don't even know it at that age. So
Yes.
can you walk me through, like, what inspired you at that moment? What was going on in this second grade child's mind that she thought that she wants to do this? Is there
So yes, I will expand on that. I thought because of time, I wanted
no,
to
no, we
get.
really want to get to know
Okay.
you and the journey, really.
Okay. So as I grew up and had sort of an understanding of what was happening around me, I could see that how men spoke to women, and I found that the way they spoke to women was very condescending, including in my own house. My brothers, my father to his wife, to my mother, or even my brothers, the way they spoke to the cleaning people in the house. or my cook. I loved my cook. My cook fed me all the food I wanted, so I was always very grateful to that. And so I loved her dearly. But then the way I would see people speaking to them just because they were belonged to a lower socioeconomic status. And also my mother was going through some gynecological problems at that time, and it seemed like her problems were not important because she was women. She was a female. And even though I was so young, I came first in class, and I almost did two standards in 1 year, starting even from standard 1. I was doing well in my studies. So in 1 year, I would do 2 grades, basically. So I was quite mature for my age. And I think now, understanding spirituality, I feel like probably I was an OBGYN in my last birth, like what we say, an old soul, and I was just carrying it forward. And so that made me always protective of my mother, protective of the women who kept our house clean, who cooked for me, the girls who used to come and play with me. And at a very young age, I also saw my aunt, whose husband was an alcoholic, and the way she was being abused physically, emotionally, verbally. And I think all these things had a lot of, my brain, I guess, was on a subtle level going towards women empowerment even at that age. And so when my father was didn't have a sister. So he always treated me like a sister rather than a daughter. And even though I have an older sister, he was praying to God that he should have another daughter. And
Wow,
so I'm the young.
unusual.
Yes, and so I was the youngest. I'm the youngest of 6 siblings, and I was born after some little gap, So I was like an oops, And so when I was born, my father became very sick from diabetes and was losing his eyesight. And so he sort of had, he was tenderly loving to me, and treated me like a princess. And so did all 4 brothers of mine. But I could see how they treated my sister or my nieces, my cousins. I could see the undertones of disrespect, and so from very young age, I saw that my brothers were given more liberties. I saw that my grandmother would hide the good fruits, the expensive fruits for the sons in the family, and would keep the fruits that were not so good for the daughters of the family. And of course, because I could differentiate it between me and my sister, because my sister is little darker skinned than me, and I could see that my brothers treated both of us differently. So all these things became roots in my head, and my father felt that as he was getting sicker, that he wanted to make sure that I was educated enough that I wouldn't depend on my brothers, because he saw the way the world was going, and he felt that if he did leave his body before I became financially stable and I could stand on my own 2 feet, that maybe my brothers would not support me, even though I have wonderful brothers. But he saw the world, he saw what was happening in the world, and he felt that he had to get me educated. And he had to have me do something where women were empowered. So my oldest brother, is about 12, 13 years older to me, and he was already in medical school as I was growing up. And so one day I was in 5th grade, and even though I was in 5th grade, I was still very young. I was only 10 years old. And because as I said, I was jumping grades quickly, and my father decided that he would leave me in Bombay where education is better, because in Indonesia, when girls go to school, I'm born in Jakarta in Indonesia. But at that time, when girls went to school there, there was a very high incidence of violence against women there, against girls. Pedophilia, rapes in the form of ragging. So my father really did not want me to go to a school in Indonesia or do further studies in Indonesia. So his plan was that I should be educated in India, but he also saw that I was extremely attached to my mother. And so he sent me and my mother to Bombay, and then in the middle of the night, after a month, my mother left and went back to Indonesia. And of course, I was staying with my grandmother, where I saw a lot of discrimination between brothers and sisters and how she favored my brothers. So all this was becoming sort of solid in my brain, that I have to do something for women, because having parathas with ghee for the brothers and having parathas without ghee for the daughters. And once I saw like my brother slap my sister, and that was very hurtful for me.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't being treated that way, but I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But then I also saw that my sister became aggressive, against me. And then came out envy and jealousy. And so I saw the roots of many vices coming up in front of me, just because of gender discrimination, basically. And also the attitude of women being third-class citizens maybe in Asian culture or maybe in India. I didn't know then, because I had not come to United States. But so anyway, so that started the journey. And then I went into medical school, and then my marriage.
Yeah. Asha ji, I think that most of the people who are listening to this are kind of resonating with the discrimination you talk about, because we've all seen it.
Yes.
And we've all seen it. Sometimes it is more crude, sometimes it's more subtle, but we can all identify with these incidences. And the other thing, growing up, this discrimination aside, we also, somehow we never honored, how do I say this politely, our women parts. Somehow it was always something to be hush-hushed about, something never to be talked about, something never to be honored. So we never really, I feel like you must have seen this even more, but now that when you're talking about it, I just realized that I've never been taught to honor it.
Yes.
At most, it was never talked about. And if you had some trouble, you were taken to a doctor, but you were never taught to honor that physical femininity. Sometimes you were honored, mothers were honored, right? A woman, just her own body, without any titles of mother, wife, daughter, just ourselves as a woman with our whole body. Because I mean, you can explain this better, but I feel that we have to start with our body, because we are a body embodiment right now. So can you, and I know that many other women feel like me, and we have since learned to empower. What would be your advice to women? Like, how do we start building a relationship of honoring our bodies, ourselves, and then going on to spirituality?
I think that now when I'm doing a lot of coaching, and I find that parenting is really key, because working with girls of different ages, and I find that really parenting is an issue. Parenting does not teach us how to think. Parenting doesn't teach us to respect ourselves. They don't talk about self-respect. Parenting doesn't teach us dignity. Parenting doesn't teach us self-worth, and I feel that is one thing I can't go back. But today I can speak to parents to respect their children, where the girl, boy, but even children should be respected, because age is just a relative term. You know, I believe more in the soul now. And I think that because our parents didn't focus on how to teach us how to think, so automatically we did not learn to respect ourselves. So if we don't respect ourselves, we will not speak up when somebody else is disrespectful to us. So the art of thinking, which is what I think meditation is, meditation teaches me to introspect and to learn how to think right. And I think if we are taught this in childhood, how to think of ourselves, what parts of our body are safe touch, unsafe touch, respectful parts, private parts, I think life would be more respectful for women in general. And you know, being in spirituality, I have seen even issues with men too. I have seen boys, you know, obviously being played with. And so, having seen this whole spectrum and having done a spiritual pilgrimage in 2017 in all the different ashrams all over India, where I have, you know, have done medical camps for the Gurukul kids who are in the ashrams, I have seen even boys need to be taught this, because I've seen adult men or even women playing with boys. So this body thing is not just focused on women, it's focused even on men. Because unknowingly, I have seen sometimes fathers tell their daughters, you know, oh, you've gained weight, lose some weight. Oh, you look like a potato. You know, I have heard such words. And I have seen the girls that I am now helping, that even though they are 60, those words are still ringing in their ears about them looking like a potato, or fatso. Fatso is a very common word where boys call girls who are chubby during puberty, oh, you are fatso, you know, oh, your cheeks are too chubby, they don't look pretty. And boys who stare at girls, you know, from the back, from the front. And then now with homosexuality, not only in the adult age, starting even at young age, I've seen that happening even to boys, and coming even from teachers, and coming even, unfortunately, in spiritual organizations, churches, temples, mosques. The children, the innocent children, are immune to nothing. And so I think parenting is key. Without proper parenting, I think that we cannot create a better world. So for me, my spiritual focus actually changed. I would say around 2012, when the incident of the gang rape happened in Delhi, you know, and I met the mother of that girl, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep for 3 months. I felt like God was waking me up and saying that, Asha, don't wait till you retire at 65 to do what your passion is, what your dream is of helping women. And I was nowhere close to 65 in 2012. I was obviously in the peak, you know,
I'm just
and of
getting
my career.
goosebumps as you speak, Asha ji. As you're speaking this particular incident, just giving me goosebumps. Please continue.
Okay, so anyway, when this incident happened, I couldn't sleep, and I could feel God shaking me at 3 in the morning. Wake up, this is not the time for you to sleep. This is the time for you to get up. So I got together some women in San Diego and a few of them from LA. And we created an awareness rally, and we promised that we would try to help these type of girls. And so I was fortunate enough to go to India with Sister Diane and presented to the team of Brahma Kumaris in 2013 with Mrs. Sheila Dikshit, who was the minister at that time. and presented our project of creating this empowerment for women, and more so in the villages and the rural areas, because a lot of times we don't realize that when we say, when we are even now preparing this World United recordings, who is listening to it? Is it really reaching the women who really need it? You know, the people in the villages who have just one mobile smartphone at home? Is it reaching the red light areas of India? Because right now I'm working with the women in the GB Road in Delhi, one of the biggest red light areas in Asia. So is it reaching them? Last week, these women asked me for a computer as a gift for Raksha Bandhan. And they said, we want to do some online learning because the group Kat Katha is inspiring them to leave the sex worker profession. And they said they needed a computer to do online learning so they can get out of this profession. So, as a spirituality, and I was in that mode for a long time where everything had to do with gyan, meditation, breathing, yoga. I was doing a lot of that. And of course, my work at the same time. And then 2012, when this happened, I cut back on my work, where I only started working on consultation basis and contract jobs, and started devoting 6 months a year to India. And I found that all this that we are talking about, she, the people, spiritual organization, I'm very spiritual. I don't really talk to many people before noon because I feel 8 hours of my day should go to spirituality. But I found that very easy for me to sit and be happy and listen to a nice spiritual talk and learn a few things from it every single day of my life, because I got into spirituality very young. But what am I doing for my sisters, really? I mean, is this reaching the areas, where it should be, So my Guruji guided me with that, and I went to different parts of India, and ultimately in 2016 decided to stay put in Rishikesh. So most of my work now, 6 months a year, is in Rishikesh. But this whole episode of 2012 was my wake-up call not to wait till I'm 65 and retire from practice, because one of the things that my Guruji asked me, she was not well. I was taking care of her 2013, 14, 15.
And this is Dadi Janki? Is this the...
Dadi Janki, right. So I was living with her quite a bit at that time, being her personal physician, and staying with her in the same room. So it was a big fortune for me. I think it just fell on my lap. And I had so many moments with her alone, when I was taking care of her, or middle of the night, or in the hospital. And when I left, after she got better and I left, she asked me, Asha, do you need the money that you're working so hard as an OBGYN? Do you have enough to retire comfortably at this age? I said, yes, I have enough to retire comfortably, because by then I'm actually away from the material world. I followed a lot of her principles, in fact, all of it, because she is my inspiration, my guide. I breathe her every time I breathe. So she is a constant reminder to me of my purpose in life. So at that time, when she asked me that question, I said, yes, if I have enough to survive comfortably, then I don't need to do the physical work of being an OBGYN. I can just serve as a coach. And not for money, because sometimes when money comes in the picture, that 100% purity, selfless intention, honesty, transparency, I feel becomes a little cloudy and muddy. And since I had given up working for money, I have found that personally myself, I have become lighter. I am in control of my mind. I can sleep when I want to sleep. I can get up when I want to get up. If I put my mind into something, my intellect tells my mind to do something, I can do it. I don't have that fear. And if you know that in Punjabi, in the Sikhs, when I went to the Golden Temple in Amritsar, I learned their mantra, the Mool Mantra, which is the core mantra, Eko Ankar, meaning one vibration. And that one vibration I have to create within myself too, that my mind shouldn't be shaking from wanting to do this to wanting to do that all the time and distracting myself. So Ekonkar, Satanam, okay, Karta Purak, Nirbhav, Nirvair, Ajuni Saibam, Guru Prasad, which is God's grace, God's blessings. All these things form pillars of my life. And when I am completely in tune with the pillars of my life, then my focus on helping women stays no matter where I am. And today was a special day for me. I got up in the morning, this boy who is doing his bachelor's in yoga in Rishikesh, and I have been training him to speak English. And because of obviously the pandemic, he wanted to practice some English with me, and he sent me his voice recording about the practice he had done. And I was so proud of him. I was like, you know, this is worth it. This is totally worth it, because you cannot get this type of satisfaction anywhere else on earth. When the girls call me or when I talk to them, I don't think you can experience more happiness and bliss and ecstasy than that. This is when you experience God, because a lot of time people say, have you met God? You have been in spirituality so long. And my answer always is, if you really practice complete honesty, truth, you do world seva the way God intends for you to do, then you will experience the presence of God. Whenever any selfishness comes in, whenever you even look at the fruit of your action, even a thought of it that this is going to be the fruit of your action, then their impurity starts seeping in. And one thing I learned from Dadi Janki, even with the seva that I do, there has to be a balance of love and discipline. And one day I remember Dadi Janki telling me, Asha, not everyone deserves your time. You have to know the secret of giving time to the right people at the right time for the right thing. If you cannot learn that, huh?
How do we figure it out if this is the right? How do you make that discrimination?
Well, I think it's from experience. Like, as I said, when I got into seva, I went into different ashrams. So I spent 2 weeks every year from 2006 in Manav Sadhana, which is affiliated with the Gandhi Ashram in Ahmedabad. Then I went to Maher Ashram in Pune, and I spent time there in the orphanage with 250 kids. Then I worked with many girls in Delhi and in Rishikesh and in schools. And I realized that first was 14 to 16-year-olds. And I found that that was too late. Sometimes they were beyond help when you reach their age, because even at 14, in people that are underprivileged, Bollywood, Hollywood puts so much pressure on them that they are so distracted in the underprivileged areas like Rishikesh that they're almost beyond help. So now, last couple of years, I have lowered my age group, and now I'm working with 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And I'm working with about 40 street kids who sell the flowers on the Ganges to the tourists, you know. So I go to their huts, I go to their homes, I go to the slums, I see how they live, I speak to the parents. And I spend 3 hours every day with the street kids, and I play games with them. I try to understand them. I give them love, and so they can open up with me. And then, of course, with the kids in the school. And I've learned one thing, that if you want to inspire change, love energy is key. And my job is to first love them without judging them. If I love them and I say, oh, they're dirty, I don't want to touch them, I don't want to hug them, that energy comes out of you. And so loving, pure energy, no discrimination, but at the same time, discipline. And I'll give you an example of that, because I'm doing seva, and there was this lady who was coming to my house at her own free time. She did not respect my time, even though the whole Rishikesh knew that I go to the Aarti every day at 6 o'clock. So I devote all day to the whole Rishikesh, but after 6 is my time with God, you know, my time for my own rejuvenation. But she would not respect that. So I would tell her nicely once, twice, 3 times. And the 4th time I said, okay, now I'm not going to treat you. Because obviously, if I'm respecting you, I'm loving you, and you are not learning to respect time, then it's very difficult. And that's why, as I said, when you get to the older generation, it's very difficult. I think that the world will be a better place if we focus on the young children, totally young children. I remember that my last trip, I just came back this year in February from India, but there was a 3-year-old girl who stole an iPhone from one of the tourists, and all the street kids came to me and told me who stole it, but they did not tell the police, you know. So to that point, you know, is at that moment I experienced the presence of God, because for them to trust me and tell me to take action, is like, I feel like God planted me there, that gratitude of allowing me to serve. Also, I found that when I'm there, the girls and boys, the young boys, were not being kidnapped for organ donation. Because whenever I would come back to Rishikesh, they would say every 2 weeks we miss one kid, you know, from the street kids, one of the kid would be missing. And then when I'm in Rishikesh, I guess everybody knows I am walking around the slum areas all the time and keeping my eyes open, being alert, because I'm watching everybody. You know, I'm even watching the cops if they are taking any bribes, and I'm watching to see if people are paying GST or not, you know, and I'm calling them out without fear. And I'm even going to the ashrams and telling them, why are you supporting alcoholism? Why are you not speaking to the ministers whom you invite to do opening ceremonies for you? You have the opportunity to approach these ministers to end alcoholism, which is the root cause of domestic violence, of prostitution, infidelity, everything. Alcoholism with drugs. I mean, I have seen 13-year-old boys on the Ganges in such a spiritual place, kids laying there unconscious from overdose. So you have to keep yourself alert, awake, and you have to be fearless, you know. So yes, I'm happy the cops are fearful of me, because I'm hoping that that fear doesn't allow them to take corruption. So it's not just empowering other girls to be like that, you know, but it's empowering the children to be truthful, to be honest, and to teach them what is the benefit of being honest. What is the benefit of being truthful? Spirituality doesn't mean, like, you know, I wear mainly white clothes. So it doesn't mean that you wear white clothes and you sit in a meditation room and you remember God. Meditation also means, spirituality also means we do the work God has given us. And one of that is helping these people to grow to be better human beings. And I think childhood is the best time for it, because if a 3-year-old girl can steal an iPhone, obviously she's learning it from somebody, you know? And so poverty is a huge disease, and with poverty comes a lot of issues. And obviously I'm not originally from India, and I lived in a protected family who was higher middle income family. But all these experiences of mine just taught me one thing: there is more to just doing yoga, there is more to just doing breathing sessions, there is more to just listening to bhajans, there is more than just listening to satsang. I think it's time to go out there and help each individual that you meet on the way. People told me that, Asha, why Rishikesh? In San Diego itself, there are so many women who are not empowered, who tolerate domestic violence, and they come from high-income families. There is human sex trafficking inside for itself, $900 million per year business in human sex trafficking. And I was working in that for a few years, but I realized that San Diego doesn't need me. There are enough people in America that are interested in this topic and interested in empowering other women. But in India, they need me more. Asia needs people like us more. If I took care of one child, and I hope it's not one, I hope my goal of at least 100 children is met, and hopefully 1,000. But if each one of us empowered one person in life, girl or boy, I think we would have a better world. And I think if we start early. So for me, having parenting classes is key, because nowadays children are on their mobile phones, on the net, on Zoom now, and on TV, even having televisions in the van. They don't know how to respect nature even, right? They have never gone and hugged a tree. I grew up where I was told hugging tree is such a wonderful feeling. And when I went to Sadhguru's ashram in Coimbatore and met the children going to school in Coimbatore in a school, I could see the children were being taught to play, to ride horses, to go hiking, trekking, to love the trees, to love the grass, to love water, and to be grateful for everything. Mansi, that you go grocery shopping every week, every 2 weeks. And you are privileged that you can pick up everything you see on the counter without looking at the label for the price. How many people are able to do that? Okay. And for me, when I go grocery shopping, the first thing that comes out from me is, God, thank you. I can buy all the healthy foods I would like to eat. I can buy nuts. When I first went to India doing this seva work, I met children who had never even eaten an almond in their life. And here whenever I eat my almonds every day now, my thought goes to that. I met children who were 14, 16 who had never eaten an almond in their life. So for me, it's just a lesson of gratitude. When I drive my car, when I, do my grocery shopping, when I get up in the morning, I said, I have a beautiful bed to sleep on. These people who sleep in rooms 8 by 8 and we complain, right? Oh, these maids, they come, they clean a house, they're so dirty, they have lice, they have this. But what do you expect when you're sleeping on the floor? 8 people in an 8 by 8 feet room. Of course, you're going to have lice. Of course, you're going to get dengue from mosquitoes, so many things. But for me, even though I believe in karma theory, I also believe that doesn't mean we should let them be the way they are. I believe that spirituality teaches me compassion, teaches me mercy, and teaches me that if I can have almonds, so can you, and do I ever think of sharing my almonds with the street kids? Or I feel that, oh, they're street kids, they should be happy with bananas. And it's like when I would go to the kids in school, I would ask them, what should I bring for you next time? And they would say, guava. They cannot afford to have guava in India, which is so cheap. They cannot afford to have oranges. All they could afford was bananas. Okay. So for me, when I have all these stories to remember, you can imagine they can, in the beginning, when I first started doing it, I was getting almost like depression the first few months. And that depression did not really obviously materialize into anything, because every day my meditation and my spiritual readings would tell me to do something about it. Or God would say, you know what, hey, you feel this way, then do something about it. So now I have moved away from this idea that I used to have meditation classes here, and many people would come together and we would gather together, meditate. But then in years, I never saw much of transformation. They were still unhappy. They were still had tears in their eyes. And these are not poor people. I'm talking about San Diego now. But then with my experience in India, that taught me that one-to-one is best. So right now, even with the coronavirus, I have them come one by one, and understand their issues. Let them, the power to listen is so important. To listen to their stories, because we may think that the problems of the women or the men in San Diego are not important. Important for whom? What is important for me may seem nothing to somebody else. But for that person, even one phone call can disturb them, not just for 15 minutes, it can disturb them for a week. Just attending a yoga session or a meditation class is not going to help them. They need someone to listen to their disturbed mind. And so for me, this is also seva. This is a form of seva that I'm fortunate enough to be able to do in San Diego. When somebody calls me and they want a private session with me, I don't look at the clock. I give them my time. I surrender my time to them without looking, oh, you've been here 20 minutes or you've been here 1 hour. Because surrender is a very important term. And, my Dadiji taught me surrender does not mean that I become part of an ashram or I become a part of a spiritual group. Surrender means I'm surrendering completely mind, body, soul, thoughts, everything to helping somebody else. For me, that's what surrender means. So like when Harrison Klein, actually, I believe in being incognito. And so in fact, I've been deleting my websites and everything, because I feel that sometimes even websites can also have some other attachment to it. Oh, I have to update my website. Oh, I want people to read what I'm doing. I want people to see what I'm doing. I want them to look at the pictures of these poor kids, I want them to do this. I mean, there is that I want, and I want people to know what good things I'm doing. So like this year, I actually decided to close my NGO, We Empower Her, because Modi ji actually inspired me to do that, because he basically was closing down all the fraudulent activities with so many NGOs in India. And I said, you know what? Yes, I'm not doing anything fraudulent. At the same time, I don't want any negative thoughts coming in somebody's head. Oh, she has an NGO. Maybe she's using this money to buy her ticket to go to India. So I said, you know what? If my website and what I do is creating a negative thought on somebody else, then maybe I'm responsible for it too. So I gave up my NGO without giving up the work. I just deleted my website, weempowerher.com. I said, I don't even want to tell the world what I do. It's a part of my humility that I just want to be incognito. So when Harrison Klein told me about the World United, my first answer to him was no, and then I said, okay, I am going to serve Harrison. So I'm actually doing this as my seva to Harrison. And then introduce,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So Asha, I think what you're saying is so inspirational. You actually got to meet some of the most spiritual people. You were at the height of what is the professional life, and yet you chose to pour that love energy into what the society views as the lowest strata. And what you brought, the when you were talking about that spirituality is not just about being good within, or doing bhajans or listening to kirtans, or being in a room, but actually living intensely and doing seva to the people who need it the most.
Yes.
And the conditions that you went to in Rishikesh were far more severe than San Diego. I mean, I don't even know, but I can just assume. And even there, you were not just situated in an ashram and I'm going to work with these filtered kids. You were going into the slums. You were dealing with the police, and you were dealing with people who are overdosed. You were dealing with people who have domestic violence. So there is no filter, right?
No.
Everywhere you are, there's no filter. And even from the stories you are telling, there are so many stories we can even hear that you have not told. Because
Yes,
when you are
of course.
dealing with these, right? I mean, those are just separate conversations that I cannot even imagine what you must have seen there. And, and this is such an inspiration because everyone who's listening to this is interested in spirituality. If they are listening to the World Parliament on spirituality, somewhere there is that seed. And to hear you and how you have poured that love into not just where it was convenient, where it was the most inconvenient. And I am sitting in awe. Just, I'm so inspired that how you have chosen to do that. Because in San Diego, even the weather is convenient.
Yes, that's true.
Right? I mean, forget everything else. Even the weather is convenient. And you made the choice. You were not forced into it. You made that choice. And that is so empowering to hear.
But that's everything about life is choice, right? When you get up in the morning, it's your choice what time you get up. And when you get up in the morning, whom do you remember first is also a choice. Do you think about God when you wake up? Or do you think about what to cook for breakfast or what to serve your children? I mean, I'm not saying serving children is wrong. I'm saying that what is your first thought when you wake up in the morning? Sometimes I have seen many mothers when they go to bed, they're already thinking the night before what to make for breakfast next morning. But I always tell these women, is there a guarantee I'm going to get up in the morning? I have no guarantee that I will get up in the morning. So why don't I just sleep in God's remembrance and leave it to Him, And why is food so important that I should give it so much thought, And I'm somebody, I grew up where we had 6 dishes on the table even for breakfast, okay? But now I have learned to eat only once a day, and I've also learned that seeing the children in Rishikesh and the poor people, I have learned to eat simply just chapati and a sabji, nothing fancy, So, and I'm not saying it's wrong to eat anything fancy. Don't get me wrong. I do love my occasional samosas or gulab jamun or whatever I like, but I don't think about it. You see what I mean? I don't dwell on the thought, okay, I'm going to make pani puri tomorrow and think about it 2 days before. Because I don't think food deserves so much attention. I think what deserves it, my choices,
Yes.
And so everything is a choice. You talking to me is a choice. You could easily say, I'm not available on Monday at 8:30. But you chose to do this. And I'm thankful for that because you're giving me your time. Not that I'm giving you my time, but you are giving me your time. So that attitude of gratitude is key for happiness. If you want to be happy, you have to be grateful, you know. So for women, you know, when they have a pimple on their face, you should see the panic that girls go through, especially the poor girls who don't even have money to buy a face soap to wash off their face, you see. So, but then you see the girls even in developed countries like America, you know, many girls get a pimple right before the menstrual cycle starts, and even the anticipation that they're going to get a pimple in the next 2 weeks will give them sleepless nights. But that's a choice, because this choice is given to them. You want to think about your pimple, or you want to think about being happy? Maybe thinking about the pimple makes the pimple come, you know. But all this is based on parenting. You know, if you tell a girl, oh, you have a pimple, I think that's almost like you don't respect yourself, not just the girl who has the pimple. You're focused on her pimple. You're not focused on the soul. You're not focused on the agony she is going through. So for me, when I see a girl with a pimple, yes, as a doctor, I help her to get rid of that pimple. But at the same time, from my heart comes, God, I'm so grateful I don't have a pimple. Second of all, God, help her get rid of that pimple. But that only is a choice. It's a choice, the thoughts I create, you know. Is somebody disturbing me, or is somebody else's action creating a disturbance? I'm creating the disturbance. Who is creating that disturbance? Because I see these poor kids in Rishikesh in December at 0 degrees, outside on the ghats with a cotton shirt, with a flip-flop, half-broken chappal, totally happy and playing and flying kites with me. And never grumble, Asha, Didi, we are cold. They call me Didi. And they are cold, nothing. Never a word, you know. And so for me, I have learned so much from them. They have not learned from me, I think, as much as I have learned from them, you know. So this is a journey. And I think that this journey of gratitude is, I think, an eye-opener for everybody. I think it makes everybody's life much better. And simplicity. I learned this from Dadi Janki. She said to live on 8 pairs of clothes. I was somebody, even 3 closets weren't enough, you know. And now following her, my life has become so simple, because if I'm only wearing white clothes, it doesn't matter what I wear, as long as it's clean, you know. And so for me, that simplicity of life on a physical level creates simplicity in your mind. If your mind is simple, then only you can create thoughts of seva, of purity, of, you know, of being a karma yogi. You know, yes, doing action, but selfless actions, actions of purity. All these girls, I mean, when they send me all these messages, I mean, for Raksha Bandhan, I have a girl that who was gang raped by 8 guys 2 years ago, you know. And, you know, she was gang raped because of what? Because she used to come first in her class, okay? And these 8 school boys, class boys of hers, gang raped her after school. Okay, and so and you know, so I sort of adopted her, and I sent her a salwar kameez to wear for Raksha Bandhan. So excited, so happy. 600 rupees, 700 rupees, but to see her smile, her gratitude. I mean, she took a picture with it on, and I'm like, 700 rupees is what? $10 even here? Not even $10. And here we can go for an ice cream.
Yeah, it's Starbucks for you and me. That's $10.
Yeah, you know, so that's why I feel gratitude, and, you know, that gives you an experience of God. And I always tell people, you want to experience God, the only way to experience this God is when you do God's task, when you become an angel for someone, when you surrender yourself to helping somebody. Doesn't have to be poor people. It can be even a rich person. Some of the unhappiest people I've met are the richest people on earth. Okay. So I feel that this word surrender has a huge meaning. You know, can you really give up 1 hour of your time once a week to somebody whom you don't really know? Can you call up someone that you don't really know? You have met her once or twice and you call her up once a week because she lives by herself. Like there's a couple here in San Diego, husband, wife, they're in the 80s, 90s, you know, and because of the coronavirus and the health situation, they're not leaving the house. And many people know that couple, right? But for me, when I call them, I experience God, right? Because I'm being an angel for them. Nobody calls them except for their one son who brings groceries for them once a week. You know, that for me gives me that experience of God. Because what is God? Who is God, really? God is someone who has all the virtues. And if I can have some at least of those virtues, I think that I can experience God, right? That
So
divinity is an experience. And if you do God's task, that's it. And I've experienced it in my own life because I have had an experience where I was driving 70 miles an hour and it had just started raining. My car spun 360 degrees on a freeway with 6 lanes. And I should have been dead, okay? I came out completely unscratched. In fact, many cars pulled over to see if I was even alive. And when I walked out of the car, people were shocked. And you know, nothing happened to me and nothing happened to my car.
Wow.
And so for me, that's an experience of God, you know. And then I sit in my car and I drive to the hospital and deliver a baby, okay? So that is God's experience for me, you know.
Wow, he had to almost what do you call it? Uh, so he was keeping you safe for his own, like for his task. You had
Exactly.
to, right?
Yeah, I had to reach somewhere.
You had to channel him and bring beautiful, yeah.
Faith, you know, faith. People talk about what is faith, you know. Faith is if you love somebody truly, if God is your beloved, then you have to have this blind trust in him that he will hold your hand, you know, all times, you know.
Irrespective of the outcome, as you said, right? Irrespective of
exactly. And people were like shocked, you know, how I had the mental stability at that time to even go to the hospital to deliver the patient, you know. But it was not me, it was God. I had done surgery with an IV in my arm running because I was sick, but my surgery was already scheduled. And I went to the hospital and I was operating. And during the operation, I had requested the team, for instance, to play the Lokaha Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu throughout the entire surgery. And I honestly tell you, when the surgery was complete, I don't even know whether I did the surgery. I had that experience that God was doing that surgery because I was mentally alert, I was intellectually on it, and my hands were doing the surgery, but I felt that the surgery went so smoothly, and it was not a small surgery, it was a big surgery, and everything went so well. And after the surgery, I was sharing this experience with the nurse. I said, I don't even remember what happened during surgery. All I know is that her surgery was done, it went very well, and the nurses who were recording it said it went very well, and the patient did very well. But this is my faith in my beloved, you know, and my beloved is God, you know. And I tell people that if you really love God, you will do what he really wants out of you. And I'll give you a very fine example that is applicable in today's world of divorces, you know. When I divorced my husband ultimately because he threatened to kill my mom, you know, and I had no choice.
I wanted to come back to that story because, you know, that's when I'd interrupted you. So I'm so glad you have come to that. Yes, please
Okay.
go on.
So after 10 years, when many psychiatrists told me things were not going to get better, and then he threatened to kill my mother. And I will just tell you one of my experiences of the violence that I experienced. He threw me from the second floor, you know. So, and this was in the middle of winter of New York. So, and I was sitting outside shivering all night long. So having experienced that type of violence for 10 years, but I continued to bless him. I continued to pray for him. And when the time came that I had to go through a divorce, and the court hearing happened, and the night before the court hearing, he left a note under my door saying that if I had to marry a woman again in my next birth, I would have God give you back to me because you have been my Sita. So he, being a doctor, and with the money that I was making, he could have gotten 35% of my income for the next 10, 20 years of his life, and maybe forever, because he had a mental dysfunction diagnosed, right? He didn't show up for the hearing, and he didn't show up because he felt that he had tortured me enough that he didn't deserve $1 from me. And
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, this man could have gotten at least $10,000 a month from me for the
Wow, that's
next
the beginning
10,
of his
20 years,
transformation. Yeah.
and I could not believe it. And it was like, I said, this is God. This is God doing it. This is not me. I didn't do anything at that time. But I was in my spiritual journey from 1987, and I got married to him in July of 1986. And then first week of August 86, somebody saw me crying on the doorsteps, and I got introduced to the Brahma Kumaris. But even then, I was not into it till I met Dadi Janki in a public program in 1987, and then I became obviously very much into it. And I feel that if you do good in this world, like if somebody hates you, or somebody is jealous of you, or somebody is really mean to you, if you just send blessings to that person, I think that there is victory. And I will give one more example. In 2016, I went through a lot of gender discrimination at my job at Sharp Hospital here in San Diego, and quite a bit of bullying and harassment, and I decided to raise my voice, because if I'm doing empowerment work, then I shouldn't accept somebody doing that to me. And this was my dream job, actually. It was perfect. It was on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I had 4 days a week to do my seva. So I loved my job. I had the time for my seva. It was just 5 minutes from my house. But I asked myself one question: should I accept harassment in exchange? Should I accept bullying? Should I not raise my voice against it? And other doctors had been going through it, and I said, no, I will not. And so I raised my voice on it. I sent an email to the CEO, who unfortunately or fortunately, being a woman, was practicing discrimination and harassment. And I went on a hunger strike for a week in front of the hospital, not to get on a channel or on the newspaper, but just to wake up the nurses and doctors. And then, of course, the truth came out as to how much this was happening at Sharp Hospital, which is one of the biggest employers in San Diego. And at that time, my bosses told me, why don't you hire an attorney? But I was not happy with that. I was not happy with that suggestion, but somehow or the other, I said, let me listen to them. They're wiser than me. So I hired the attorney. I gave him a retainer. And then I was not comfortable. Every time I meditated, I was like, God would tell me, get out of this norm, suing people. Just give them blessings, forgive them. And I could have won the case and made a lot of money out of it. But that was not my goal. My goal was to create awareness. And I called my attorney 2 days later. I said, you keep the $5,000. I don't want you to represent me anymore. I represent myself. He said, oh, you might lose your license. I said, fine. If I'm meant to lose my license, I will. And so the hospital obviously took advantage of it and tried to attack my medical license, and having no malpractice lawsuits in 30 years. And again, all the doctors, all my colleagues told me, no, hire an attorney now. You have to fight for your license. I said, no, I didn't do anything wrong. In fact, I was the victim, but I refuse to use the word victim. I'm the warrior. I'm going to bring this to the front. And when I went to the medical board for my hearing, again, they were shocked, the people in the California Medical Board, that I walked in the hearing without an attorney, representing myself. And obviously I won. I got my license. I mean, they never ever took away my license, but they told, they stood up, they gave me a standing ovation. It's not ego or arrogance that I'm telling you. I'm just telling you, if you're truthful, if you're honest, nothing will happen to you. And I was given my unrestricted license back immediately. Even the doctors who were at the hearing and the attorney, everyone stood up and said, we wish more doctors would do that. But we are so caught up in our insecurity, because greed is an insecurity, right? Greed is not money. Greed is a manifestation of my insecurity, that I won't have money, that I won't be able to have my Mercedes, I won't be able to have my Jaguar, I won't be able to have my $1 million house. That's what greed is, my insecurity. Makes us so fearful for all the wrong that's going on in the world. And when people say why there is Kali Yuga, there's Kali Yuga because of greed. If there was no greed, there would not be Kali Yuga, because greed brings in so many different things. And everyone, all my colleagues, all my friends, they were shocked that how come nothing happened to my license, when so many of my other friends who had gone through similar things had spent $300,000, $500,000 on an attorney, would still lose their case. Because the corporate world, in a way, is a mafia world. And this mafia attitude exists in our minds. It's not just corporate. It exists in families. It exists basically in this corrupt world. So when we say about spirituality, we must become courageous. We must speak up when we see something wrong. And we must not take part in anything wrong, right? If my patient is being overcharged and I'm allowing that to happen, then I am following that system. So karma, what does karma theory tell us? If I take part in something that is not right, I'm also contributing to some negative karma in that. So we have to be careful with every single thing we do, from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we do at night. Like when we get our children ready for school, we want our children to look good. And when the uniform is not right, we make a comment to our child. But is it possible that that comment sticks in their head and creates something negative in their mind? We have to be careful about that. Simple things, cars, what we eat, what we speak on the dining table, everything has, like in a grocery store, as simple as that, we go to buy something and we know that the ingredients of this product is not good, but we still buy it. What is that? The greed for taste, that's a greed too, right? My taste buds are going out of control. We know that this particular product, this food product, has stuff in it that is harmful for me. And yet we buy it, right? What is that? So our sense organs also, when they are weak, they become a form of greed. And this is what spirituality is. Spirituality is strengthening my sensory organs. And I'm not saying not to have a chocolate, but when you have a chocolate, you have that awareness that what you're eating requires you to follow it with some other action after that. Okay, I have a chocolate. Chocolates are good for my heart. They're good for my blood vessels. So there's a limit to it. But then when I eat 2 bars of chocolate in a day, what needs to follow after that? A day of fasting, a day of exercise, which I have to anyway do, but I have to increase it. Do I follow it with that? If I have a samosa, what comes after that? So this is what spirituality teaches us. Okay, have your samosa, have your ice cream, but what about your awareness? What are you eating? Okay, I'm eating something unhealthy, but I'm going to give it good blessings. I am satisfying my taste buds, but also I have the awareness. Next day, I need to do a semi-fast. I need to exercise. I need to eat healthier. Are all these actions following the action of eating a samosa, eating a pint of ice cream? This is what spirituality is, strengthening our awareness of being soul conscious, our awareness of seeing what we are eating, or being grateful. Like when you eat a chocolate that's wrapped up in this beautiful paper, the person who pulled out the cocoa in the fields, who are usually underpaid, okay? The ones who make the chocolate, add the milk, add the sugar, wrap up with the aluminum foil, wrap up in that beautiful wrapper. So many things go into it. The shipping people. When you are eating it, are you grateful to all these people who make this chocolate that you're eating? That's what spirituality teaches me, is to be aware of what I'm eating, what are the actions to follow after that. So spirituality is a way of life from morning to night, all the time, 365 days a year, every second of your life. Spirituality is not going to satsang 1 hour a day, or meditating 1 hour a day, doing yoga 1 hour a day. Spirituality is a way of life. It doesn't tell you not to go dancing in a club. It doesn't tell you don't wear fancy clothes. But being aware what you're wearing is not you. You're wearing a beautiful dress. You bought this $400 dress. You go out dancing. You go out and eat in a nice restaurant. Spirituality is not telling you to stop all that. Spirituality is telling you to be aware that what you're doing is you're decorating your body, and to be aware that this is temporary happiness. It is not permanent happiness. I'm not saying not to have temporary happiness, but being aware that this is temporary happiness, and that tomorrow it has to follow with something else. That is spirituality. I never tell people that spirituality tells you to stop anything. Spirituality tells us to be aware of our breath, be grateful to our lungs, to our brains, to our IQ. So many times I teach the kids simple things and I have to repeat it 100 times. Initially, I used to get frustrated. Now I become grateful. Thank you, God, for giving me such a good IQ. Thank you for making me intelligent. Thank you for making me a doctor. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to see that I am in a better place. I have a better life. We are not even grateful for all the little things. We have this Zoom. We have this iPad. I'm talking to you, right? I have this beautiful meditation room and God is watching me. I feel His presence with me right now as I talk to you. Am I talking to you? No, I feel God is talking to you. I'm not God, but God gives me that energy, that spark, that awareness that this is His task. And if I have the faith that this is God's work, then it will all be good. I don't have to prepare my talk. One of my friends knew I was going to do this today and, asked me if I prepared for it. I said, what am I preparing? Spirituality is my life. Then why should I prepare for it? If I have to prepare for meeting you today on Zoom and I have to prepare a talk for it, that means I am not spiritual. That means I'm only spiritual when I come to this meditation room 2, 4, 8 hours a day, whatever time I spend here, right? But spirituality is a way of life. Sometimes I have to be tough. because that's my role. Sometimes I have to be loving. Sometimes I have to be bland, because sometimes there are situations where I know it's better to withdraw and watch, just like a tortoise. So many different situations come in our life. Sometimes I have to play the role of being a tough cookie just to protect myself, my own integrity, my own values. That is the role I play, but that's not really me, the soul, me, God's child. This is the roles I'm playing. So this is what spirituality teaches me. So when I serve the girls, an example is 2 days ago, one of the girls who is, comes to me for empowerment. Her younger sister's photograph was on the Facebook, an inappropriate, vulgar, seductive photograph. So, you could say, oh, why should I care, But I do care, because this is how sex trafficking takes place. On Facebook, all these cyber places, this is where human sex trafficking takes place. So I called her older sister. I told her, this is it, please watch what she wears and what photograph she uploads on Facebook. And then if she doesn't listen to you, let go. But at least I have played my role, and it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks about what you do, as long as you know that you are doing it for goodness, as long as you're doing it because you are creating awareness. If you're doing it because you want people to say thank you to you, then you have to read the Bhagavad Gita again, and again and again, because if you cannot follow that part, then, you will never feel happy in life. You're always in a quest for something. And I think this is what I feel today. I'm very grateful for that. And I thank God that I'm not in quest anymore. I'm not looking for anything anymore. I'm not searching for anything anymore. I feel put wherever I am, even with this pandemic, not being able to go to India. This is it. I'm happy where I'm placed. So hopefully I have helped in contributing to some awareness. So if you have any questions, then otherwise maybe it's time enough.
Thank you so much, Asha ji. This has been so enlightening. Hearing how you have lived through different situations in life, and how you have literally, like, you said that I'm not God, but you can really see the God flowing through you in all the actions and all the choices you have made. So inspiring for all of us. Thank you so much for doing this with us. And I know we are really looking forward to this lecture by you. I could literally keep hearing you the whole night because you have lived such a life of intensity, and literally it is spirituality in action, in karma yoga, as you said. And thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Can we have 1 second of silence at least?
Yes.
So. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you, Baba. Thank you, Dadiji. Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Atul. And thank you, World United. And definitely a big thanks and hugs to Harrison Klein. And I thank all the world for their patience in this coronavirus pandemic. We will get through it together. We will win this also. Be calm, be patient, and have faith in the Almighty. Om Shanti. Thank you.